Have you ever caught yourself saying, "Ooh, they made me so mad. I had no choice. I wouldn't act this way if they didn't do that"? Let me be real with you. Every time you say that, whether out loud or in your head, you're unknowingly handing your power away. You're reinforcing a dangerous belief that someone else holds the steering wheel to your life, that your peace, your decisions, your future depends on them. But here's the truth that most people don't realize until it's too late. In every situation, you can either react or you can respond. One keeps you stuck, the other sets you free. And in this video, we're going to talk about the shift that separates people who spiral from people who rise. Because when you stop reacting and start responding, you reclaim the power the victim mindset had been draining from you. We've all had that moment when someone says the wrong thing. We've had that moment when life comes at you fast, maybe it hits you too hard, and before you know it, you're spiraling. You're lashing out one moment, you're shutting down the next, or maybe you're numbing out. And afterward, we feel it. Guilt, regret, confusion. And some of us will even have the gall to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, "I didn't have a choice." But we did. We just didn't pause long enough to see it. The victim mentality doesn't always come from weakness. Sometimes it comes from exhaustion, from being hit one too many times, from not knowing how to fight back differently. But here's what I want you to know. You're not weak. You've just trained yourself to react. And now you've grown, baby. It's time to unlearn it. Reacting is the default. It's fast, quick. It's emotional, it's raw. It feels like relief, but it usually leads to regret. Reacting is like touching a hot stove and then screaming. Responding is choosing not to touch the hot stove at all. When you react, you're operating from your most primal brain, survival mode. And survival mode couldn't care less about your long-term vision. It only cares about feeling safe in the moment. And the irony of it all is that the moment of false safety often costs us peace. Quick example. You get into an argument with someone you care about. They trigger you and you fire back. Words fly, doors slam. And now there's a wound where there used to be connection. That reaction might have felt justified. But are you concerned with being right, or are you concerned with being better? Are you concerned with ultimately aligning every decision with who you want to be? Reacting feels good for a moment. And I ain't gonna lie, every once in a while you just want to catch you an argument.
Ooh, if he says something to me today.
Reacting feels good for a moment, but responding builds good for a lifetime. The victim mindset is subtle. It doesn't always sound like desperation. Often, it sounds like logic. They made you feel this way. That's why you snatched her wig. What else could you have done? This is just how it always is. And you know what? If they would change, you would be okay. That voice inside your head whispers, it convinces you that your emotional state depends on others' actions, that your only option is to react to life instead of creating a life. But here's what's dangerous. The more you operate from that mindset, the more your brain rewires itself to expect powerlessness. Eventually, you stop seeking solutions and start settling for survival. And over time, reacting just becomes who you are. It becomes a part of your identity. But here's what I want you to remember. You weren't created to survive your life. You were made to thrive in life. If reacting is easy but costly, then I would submit to you that conversely, responding is an act of power. Now, responding doesn't mean that you don't feel it. You feel that heat rising up your left leg, because someone tap danced on your last nerve. And you know what? They even knew what they were doing. They knew it bothered you. But responding means you choose how you show up despite of how you feel. That's power. Reacting is a knee jerk. Responding is a muscle you build through practice. I remember a moment a few years ago where I was in a situation where I felt completely disrespected. I had every right to snap. And that voice, that whisper, wanted me to react. And other times I would have, and maybe one day I'll tell you those stories about the time that I did. But this particular day, I paused. I breathed. I responded with clarity, not chaos. And that moment shifted everything. It taught me that maturity isn't about having the perfect response. It's about choosing one, especially when your emotions are screaming at you to do something else. Response is where your growth shows up. And it's the proof that you're no longer at the mercy of a moment, but anchored in who you're becoming. Now, how do you know if you are operating in a victim mindset? 3 warning signs that you're stuck. The first is you constantly blame external situations or other people. If your peace depends on what someone else says or does, is a red flag. The second sign you're stuck in a victim mentality is if you feel powerless to change. If you convince yourself that this is just the way things are, that belief will always keep you stuck. And the third and the most prominent one is you avoid responsibility by hiding behind emotions. There are certain people, not you of course, but there are certain people that use how they feel as an excuse not to act. I'm too angry to do that. I'm too sad to do that. I'm too tired to do that. Feelings are valid, but they are not a reason to stay still. So ask yourself, where in my life am I waiting for someone else to fix what I have been called to face? Write it down and be honest. You will never reclaim power that you can't admit that you've given away. So how do we shift? How do we move from being hijacked by our emotions to leading ourselves with wisdom? 3 simple but powerful steps. Number 1, pause. Catch the trigger. Don't act yet. Just notice. Notice that you're feeling yourself. Notice that you're feeling that anger rise. Awareness is the beginning of authority. So number 1, pause. Number 2, reflect. Ask yourself, what do I actually want to feel right now? What outcome do I want from this moment? And number 3, respond. Choose your next move from your future self and not from your frustration. And you might even need to institute a 3-second rule, where in a heated moment, you just take 3 seconds, inhale, exhale, and then respond. The tiny space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lies. The most important part of this video that I want you to remember is every time you react instead of respond, you reinforce an identity that says you are not in control. You can't help it. You're not actively making choices. Things are just happening to you. And at some point, you have to stop giving the steering wheel of your life over to someone who upsets you, and then wondering how you keep ending up somewhere you never wanted to go. You gave the wheel up. You don't need more control over others. You need mastery over yourself. Power isn't about domination, it's always about direction. So remember, reacting is easy, but it keeps you stuck. Responding takes effort, but it sets you free. And every time you respond with intention instead of react with emotion, you're rewriting your story. You're no longer a victim of your emotions. You're the architect of your response. So I ask you, what's one area in your life where you've been reacting and now you're ready to respond? Drop it in the comments. Let's name it, let's own it, and let's move through it together. You might help someone else. And if this spoke to you, send it to someone who's been stuck in reaction mode. and needs to take their power back. And always remember that growth is a journey, it's not a destination. I'm in it with you, and I'll see you on the next one.